Yeah, how do you put someone in jail and you don't even name the clients? That sounds kind of insane.
Today, we're diving deep into the bizarre connections between Joe Rogan and the Jeffrey Epstein files. We're going to look at what's been revealed, for sure, but more importantly, we're going to look at the evidence that suggests some very powerful people are still hiding the full story.
This one question from Joe Rogan, it really gets to the absolute heart of the Epstein scandal. The identities of the clients. That's the central mystery, right? It just looms over every single document and every testimony. It's the question that really frames everything we're about to unpack.
So where do we even start with this whole mess? Well, our story kicks off not with the massive global scandal itself, but with this really specific, frankly bizarre invitation that pulled the world's biggest podcaster right into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. So get this was way back in 2017, years before the files were unsealed. A physicist named Lawrence Krauss reaches out to Rogan's team, but he's doing it on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein. And the reason? Apparently, Epstein thought Rogan was funny and wanted to meet him, even dangling dinner with Woody Allen as some kind of bait. Rogan's team gave him an immediate no. So, you'd think that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. When the files were finally unsealed, Rogan was floored to find his name in there. He wasn't on a flight log. He wasn't in some black book. He was literally in the files just for saying no to a meeting.
So you gotta wonder, why did Rogan say no when so many others clearly said yes? He explained that a lot of people get kind of starstruck by power. They see names like Bill Clinton associated with Epstein and figure it must be legit. But for him, the things he'd heard from Alex Jones about Epstein's whole world, well, that was a big enough red flag to just stay far, far away.
All right, let's shift gears now to the actual physical evidence, the thing at the very heart of this conspiracy. A black book so explosive, somebody tried to sell it to the FBI.
$50,000. That's what it was going for. Back in 2009, the FBI set up a whole sting operation. Epstein's house manager, a guy named Alfredo Rodriguez, got arrested trying to sell this infamous black book. He thought he was meeting a lawyer for one of the victims, but nope, it was an undercover FBI agent.
And according to this guy, Rodriguez, the book was basically a ledger of horrors. It had the names of powerful clients and their victims, some as young as 16. But here's where it gets even crazier. He said Ghislaine Maxwell kept a totally separate digital database of victims from all over the world, a database that, to this day, has never been found.
Okay, so the evidence wasn't just on paper or in some database that's conveniently vanished. It was also, up in the air, aboard that private jet that got that infamous nickname, the Lolita Express. Now, if you look at the flight logs that are out there from the 90s, one name pops up quite a bit. Donald Trump was a passenger on at least 8 of Epstein's flights back in that decade. But there's one flight in particular from 1993 that really makes you stop and think. The log for that trip lists just 2 passengers, Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. That's it. A detail that has, you can imagine, raised a whole lot more questions. And we have to remember, this isn't just about famous names on a flight log. There's a devastating human cost here. For survivors like Annie Farmer, the abuse was constant. It wasn't just on his island. In fact, another victim testified that abuse happened even on a 2-hour flight, leaving them, in Farmer's words, a shell of a person just trying to numb the pain. And this whole thing brings us right back to Joe Rogan's take on the scandal. For him, what's maybe the most unbelievable part isn't just the evil of Epstein and Maxwell. It's the entire system of people who made it possible. The doctors, the pilots, the stylists, all the people who must have seen what was happening and just looked the other way. Which, of course, leads us to the alleged cover-up. And this is where the Department of Justice itself gets accused of deliberately hiding the truth from all of us.
And look, these numbers aren't just pulled out of thin air. They come straight from members of Congress who got a peek at the unredacted Epstein files. After they saw them, they came out with this just staggering estimate. 70 to 80% of the information the DOJ has is still being kept secret.
So, okay, they only got a brief 2-hour look at a fraction of the files. What could they possibly find in that short time? Well, it turns out, a lot. They found a list of powerful names that the Department of Justice had, as they put it, accidentally forgotten to unmask.
In that tiny sliver of information, they found these 6 guys, all wealthy, all powerful. And that last name, that's a big one. Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of Victoria's Secret and a longtime associate of Epstein's. His name was kept hidden by the DOJ until that moment.
So, this is the crucial question, isn't it?
What does all this secrecy, all these redactions and so-called accidents, what does it all really mean? Is this just massive incompetence? Or is it something way more deliberate?
Just think about Ghislaine Maxwell for a second. She's in prison for 20 years. What more does she have to lose, right? And yet, she pleads the fifth every single time she's asked about the client list. That silence is absolutely deafening. If Epstein was just one evil guy, why is she so terrified to name names?
And her refusal to talk has just poured gasoline on this really chilling theory, one that Rogan and a lot of other people have talked about. What if Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a predator? What if he was an asset, a tool used to get dirt, basically blackmail, on some of the most powerful people on the planet?
So this is what it all boils down to. This one fundamental and, frankly, deeply disturbing question. Are we just looking at a massive failure of justice? A system that's just too clumsy to handle this mountain of evidence? Or are we seeing a system of protection, where the evidence is being actively hidden by the very people it's supposed to expose?
And that's the thought we have to leave you with. It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question about how power works. Because if the most powerful people in the entire world are on that list, who in the world has the power to actually release it